Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for tonight's virtual River and Ranch Fire Recovery Meeting. I'm Carol Hutchinson. I'm the Lake County Administrative Officer, and I thank you for joining us in this virtual world. We have co-facilitated a number of these meetings with CAL FIRE over the past couple weeks, and from the feedback we're getting, people seem to really be appreciating having the opportunity to participate in these meetings from the comfort of their own home. Tonight, we have a number of speakers to touch on a number of subjects. We're also monitoring questions that you post on Facebook, and near the end of the meeting, we'll invite everyone up and respond to questions that you have asked. The topics we hope to cover tonight are many. They include trees, brush, reforestation, an update on the movement of the fire, erosion control, water issues, cleanup of debris, prevention efforts, red flag winds, and how we're going to cope with the remaining months of summer, debris and ash, and of course our state and federal agency folks are with us here tonight as well. So we'll get started. First, our Congressman, Representative Mike Thompson, is working furiously for us behind the scenes. He was not able to come in person tonight because his work has him in another part of our district. Nonetheless, he did send us a statement that he asked me to read on his behalf. Representative Mike Thompson is doing everything he can to ensure that all available federal assistance is delivered to our community as a result of the Mendocino complex, starting with FEMA fire management assistance grants to help fight the river and ranch fires. In addition, he has been in daily contact with the state, with FEMA, and with the White House regarding the state's request for a federal disaster declaration, including individual and public assistance for Lake County as a result of these devastating fires. This includes leading a bipartisan letter with leaders Kevin McCarthy and Nancy Pelosi and 22 other bipartisan members of Congress calling on the President to approve this much-needed relief for our communities. He has been told by FEMA, the White House, and the state that this request is currently being evaluated, and he will continue to push them to make a determination as soon as possible so that our communities and citizens have the federal resources they need to recover. If you have problems during this process with any federal agencies or questions for Representative Mike Thompson related to these fires, please do not hesitate to call his office at 707-226-9898. Congressman Mike Thompson, 707-226-9898. So with that, we'll move on to our other speakers, starting with CAL FIRE. Jeremy Ron is here to give a fire update, as is the Forest Service Representative Paul Gibbs.
Good evening. My name is Jeremy Ron, Public Information Officer with CAL FIRE Incident Management Team 2, and I'll give you a brief update on the southern portion of the fire. And I have my partner with me, Paul Gibbs, with the Federal Incident Management Team 1, who will give an overview regarding the forest section of the fire. So as Charlie has spoken several times on these virtual meetings, is pretty much on this map. I know this is a very busy looking map, but all of the black portions here around the river fire, for example, this is now 100% contained. There still will be some presence of fire equipment out there to monitor that area, as well as they're doing a lot of suppression repair. The suppression repair is the component where we go in after the fire to make any repairs that were done due to firefighting equipment going in to suppress it. Things are looking very well on the southern portion of the ranch fire. As you can tell, as we look at the map here, specifically in Lake County, is we have a lot of, as we would call, black line or control line, all the way around this portion of the fire's edge all the way up to this section here, where Paul will kind of give you an update. I know that there was a lot of smoke visible today, and Paul will be able to give you an update on that. Before I pass it over to Paul, I just wanted to, first of all, on behalf of the entire incident, and I'm sure from Matt's family from Utah, we really appreciate the support that this community showed in helping us take Matt home yesterday. We left Ukiah at 2:30 in the afternoon. We had a very large presence of law enforcement from all agencies, as well as community members lining the streets. We drove down 101 into Santa Rosa, and every overpass, almost every exit, had a real good showing of the community assisting us in taking that drive with Matt to return him back home to Utah. We were able to arrive in Santa Rosa at the airport. He was taken loaded into a C-130 and was flown with 6 of our CAL FIRE Honor Guard members to fly into Salt Lake City. They made it safely into Salt Lake City last evening, and they were able to take Matt home. There will be services scheduled for, I believe, on Monday. Please follow our Facebook updates. We will provide the live stream information to be available for the public to view what they are able to provide in Utah. So that's a quick update, and again, just wanted to thank the community and all the many agencies that helped us in that procession yesterday to take Matt home. So with that, I'll hand it over to Paul, and he'll give you an update as far as the top portion of the fire.
Yeah, good evening. And as you can see, the top portion of the fire, there's a lot more red. And so the red, as you see across the top here, you know, that's representing uncontrolled fire line. A lot of that is free burning. A lot of that up in the wilderness area. We do have quite a bit of work going on over here in this western portion of the fire. This is the area just east of Potter Valley. And actually, today we're able to reduce some of the mandatory evacuation, which is reduced to a warning. So that's good news for those folks able to get back in their homes. A little small firing operation going right along the main road through here and along the fire line, which has been going well today. There's also some area right over here that the crews have been working. That's where the fires reach down to the road in the Eel River area. And so that good progress again today there too. As we move a little bit further over here, there's kind of an S curve in the Eel River. They've been having a lot of control problems in there. The fire's been spotting across the river. They've been trying to pick those up. So it's kind of in this area here. It's kind of the open, free burning. That's the little large column that you see coming up off the fire this evening and started this afternoon. It's going up Grapevine Creek, and it kind of heading to the northwest in this area here. There is also activity, you know, over this part of the fire line, but most of the heat energy is coming up over here. They have been doing some burning along the fire line here. That's been going pretty well. They've also been patrolling and holding that, and hopefully fairly shortly we'll see some black line along the fire line on this area. In addition to the Potter Valley area that went from a mandatory to a warning evacuation, we also have Stony Ford. So folks have been out of their homes there, so we're glad they were able to get back in today also.
Thank you, Paul and Jeremy. And if you'll stick around, we'll probably have questions for you at the end. And I'd like to invite up our next speaker, who is Brian Martin, our Sheriff and Office of Emergency Services Director.
Thank you, Carol. This meeting is largely about recovery, but we still are responding to the fire as it progresses. As of 4 o'clock this afternoon, we've reduced the advisory notification, or the evacuation notification, to advisory status on Bartlett Springs Road. So that just leaves us with the Elk Mountain Road National Forest area still under mandatory advisory. We're working to get those lifted as soon as we can, but obviously the fire activity is still active and ongoing, and the areas are continue to be dangerous. As far as my words for the community are, if you go into these areas that have been previously evacuated, be mindful of what you're getting into. There are still dangers that are out there. Just because the fire is out doesn't mean the danger is gone. If you're out active in ash and debris, take precautionary measures. First of all, we advise that you don't. But if you find yourself in a situation where you need to, take proper care to cover your eyes with goggles, use gloves, use a particle mask, an N95 particle mask, so you don't breathe in any contaminants. We wouldn't want you to survive the initial fire only to be subjected to some future health complications somewhere down the road. So best advice is stay out of it, but if it's unavoidable, take steps to prepare yourself. When there's ash and debris out, I went to a storage shed today to get some things and opened it up, and a bunch of ash came out. Sweeping this material up is not the proper way to do it. Make sure you wet it down when you can. We don't want to do anything that causes these particles to become airborne. Generally, just try to be careful, folks. Also keep in mind that with the red flag conditions coming up, we're not out of fire danger. We're just in the middle of August now, and as we saw last year, our fire season extended well into October. So be careful out there. Limit your mowing activity to early times during the day if you have to, when the humidity levels are up and the temperatures are down. Don't do it in the late afternoon. All your teenage sons will appreciate that advice, I'm sure. Be careful, be mindful, and we'll continue to work to help you out and get through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Our next speaker is Jim Steele, who is the chairman of the Lake County Board of Supervisors and also the District 3 supervisor, whose district, as you well know, was heavily impacted by the ranch fire.
Thank you. As the Board of Supervisors chair, of course, the entire board is saddened at the loss of a firefighter that came to us from another state. That was Matthew Burchett, and our hearts and thoughts go out to his family, particularly his wife and young son. We have lost homes, and people are going to be on the recovery from that, and that was on the heels of another fire just prior to that, the Pawnee Fire, where we lost homes, and we're still recovering from that. Some were insured, some were not. We include also in this disaster many hundreds of residents who spent all they had, who lived paycheck to paycheck while evacuated, and they came home with empty cupboards and no way to make it to the end of the month. So if anyone is interested in donations, please make it to the North Coast Opportunities in favor of those folks, and that money will be distributed and really well needed. We do have a long fire season ahead of us. We do have programs that are sponsored by CAL FIRE for hardening your home, for having the setbacks away from your home, for cutting the brush and making yourself safer. But please be mindful that no hard blades, spinning blades. Make sure it's a string cutter, not something that's cutting the grass that may hit a rock and create a spark. Keep water available for any fire that might be started, and think about your neighbors at all time. If you're a risk to your neighbor or they're a risk to you, then let your fire battalion chief know. Maybe they can come out and give some hints. In any case, it's a new normal, a new tomorrow for us, and we're not only going to see our way through this, but we're going to make it a better Lake County, and we're going to show the rest of the state just how it's done. So it'll be the Lake County model moving forward. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please call your supervisor in your district or myself, Jim Steele, at 295-6198. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Steele. And so our next speaker on behalf of Public Health is our Health Services Director, Denise Pomeroy.
Good evening. Denise Pomeroy, Health Services Director. Public Health just wanted to touch on a couple of items to follow up from the shelters and the disaster. As some of you are aware, and most everyone is aware, there was a norovirus outbreak in one of our shelters during the evacuation process. We want to make sure that the public is aware that that shelter and that school has been thoroughly cleaned and disinfected, and from the public health standpoint, we consider the norovirus outbreak in the community under control. With that said, we do want to remind families, children, and the public of norovirus. It is highly contagious, and to be mindful of yourself and your children, make sure you wash your hands often with soap and water, at least 20 seconds. Carefully wash fruits and vegetables, fully cook oysters. Do not cook or prepare or serve food or care for others for at least 2 days after you feel better from a norovirus symptoms. And make sure you clean and disinfect areas contaminated with a solution of 3/4 cup concentrated bleach or 1 cup of regular bleach to 1 gallon of water. In addition, the other quick area we want to talk about is air quality. With children returning to school and sports, be mindful of the air quality with surrounding fires in our community. Check in with Air Quality Management Board if there's any issues of unhealthy or hazardous air for your children. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. And we're moving on now to our speaker, James Scott, who is representing Lake County Environmental Health tonight.
Thank you. We'd like to reach out to those homeowners that lost homes to take into consideration to refrain from doing cleanup at this time for their structures that were lost. There's a potential that we could receive support from the state in that regard. If you choose to do self-cleanup or a private cleanup, we have a protocol specific to that. We're working very closely with the public services and the East Lake landfill to ensure that no debris goes into the landfill that shouldn't be there. If you go to the landfill with products from a fire and don't have permission from environmental health as a clearance or a permission for demo for the structure that was lost, it will be rejected. So I just want to make sure we get the word out. You can call our direct line at Environmental Help, 707-263-1164. I've taken a great number of calls, talked to a great number of folks from the Pawnee Fire and also the Mendo Complex Fire. And our goal is to work with each and every one of them to help them through this process. So again, please call our office if you have any questions about debris removal. Again, please refrain from doing debris removal at this time.
Do we need to pause, Sam?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and as you will see, as recovery evolves and the needs and issues change, our cast of speakers will vary as we go through this process. And so for the first time in our virtual meetings, I want to invite up David Cowan, who is our Water Resources Director for the county.
Good evening. Our responsibilities in water, will come up? Our responsibilities, thanks, in water resources are just beginning with this recovery. We're mainly concerned with water quality in the streams and in the lake, as well as erosion problems. We are going to be working with the Water Quality Control Board and local and other state agencies to put boots on the ground. We're going to be doing mapping. A lot of this is going to be led by the Water Quality Control Board, but we've already had meetings with them, as well as the Resource Conservation Districts and NRCS. Mapping, risk assessment, planning of projects and prioritizing those projects. This is a very large fire. It impacted an awful lot of land, and the runoff from those burned areas are going to make their way into the streams and, unfortunately, eventually Clear Lake. We're going to try to prevent that to the extent that we can. Outreach. So we're going to have a big challenge in trying to keep the ash and the amount of debris and the amount of pollutants out of the waterways. So we're dealing with total organic carbons, dissolved oxygen deprivation because of organics that are going to be making their way into the water. And we will do what we can with the limited resources we can to prioritize those properties and the lands that need it most. There are also going to be some needs that each of the individual landowners are going to need to address with regard to erosion. And we hope to make materials, outreach materials, and in some cases, hopefully, structural materials available to them as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Our next speaker is another new face this evening. It is Rachel Elkins, the director of the University of California Extension, and she's going to speak about tree issues. If you followed any of our earlier disasters, trees are always a #1 issue, as are other vegetation and things. So we welcome Rachel.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Carol. Our department, University of California Cooperative Extension, is in the Agriculture Center over there across the highway from McDonald's and below the Visitor Center. And we are home to agricultural and homeowner horticulture programs. I supervise the Master Gardener program, and many of you are familiar with the Master Gardener program in Lake County. Very, very active. When you deal with trees, there are multiple clientele. There are the commercial agriculturalists. There are the homeowners with the landscape properties and landscape vegetation, and also pine trees, oak trees, and then there are also, and then the non-commercial homeowners that might have fruit trees or other types of trees. The recommendation that I would give at this time is that, just like any other sort of damage, trees can grow back. They can regrow some of them, and the best thing to do is to wait and see for now and see what happens with a tree to going into the winter and then coming out into the spring, unless it is absolutely and completely dead. I would try to have an arborist or somebody come and take a look at the trees and see what type of structural recommendation they would give you. But if it's not a dead tree, if it's singed or has partial green and partial brown, I would just leave it alone, because you would be surprised at the regrowth. One thing about conifers and some of the landscape trees is a damaged tree can attract bark beetles, and bark beetles can create all kinds of problems down the road. So I know you've heard this from past fires. For right now, take a wait and see. Trees, the roots, if the roots are there, they're going to hold the ground in. And you want the ground to be held down so that we don't have erosion problems going in the winter. And I'd like to give you our phone number. It is area code 707-263-6838. You can reach us if you're a commercial or landscape homeowner, any kind of tree. We can help you out and refer you to the right people. Thank you.
Would you say the phone number one more time?
Certainly. Area code 707-263-6838.
Thanks so much, Rachel. Really appreciate that. And so, as we also all well know, Lakeport and surrounding areas were tremendously impacted by the river fire. And with that in mind, we have invited representatives of the city to speak tonight, and Mayor Mireya Turner is our next speaker.
Thank you, Carol. The City of Lakeport has reopened for business, reestablished all services, and they can be reached at their City Hall on Park Street in Lakeport, or by phone at 707-263-5615 during normal business hours. We currently have active recruiting going on for the following job opportunities: utilities operator, maintenance worker, police officer, and police sergeant. We have a few events at our nearby library park. We're having new playground equipment installed next week. We have a summer concert in the park tomorrow evening. It starts at 6:30, and it's free to all who want to come join us, sponsored by Coastal Media. We also have a national night out coming in September on Monday, September 17th at 6 p.m. Please come and join us. Our community is back open for business, and we welcome you. Thank you.
And our last regular presenter is Nathan Spangler, who is our recovery coordinator for the River and Ranch fires, and he has a few details to add, including a couple of statements from Air Quality and the Veterans Office.
Hello. The Lake County Air Quality Management District is actively monitoring the smoke impacts throughout the county. Current particulate levels in Lake County are quite variable, ranging from good to unhealthy, just in the past couple days. We expect similar conditions to continue depending on the weather patterns. When particulate levels reach unhealthy levels, everyone needs to take steps to protect themselves from exposure. All areas of the county may experience unhealthy air quality as smoke settles into the basin. With schools and sports activities starting, there is concern about air quality throughout our county. The Air District, with assistance from the State of California Air Resources Board, has provided purple air monitors to the main school campuses around the county so they can have real-time smoke monitoring at the schools to better assist the schools. These have started to be installed, and we hope all will be up and running in the next few days. Information on the purple air monitors can be found at purpleair.com. With the air quality forecast to reach unhealthy air quality at times throughout Lake County, everyone should be aware of the smoke levels in their area. When smoke or ash is present, people are recommended to use caution, avoid strenuous activity, avoid outdoor activities, and reduce other sources of air pollution, and be prepared for rapidly changing conditions. I also have a quick request from Veteran Services Office that there are funding applications available at the service office in Lakeport, 255 Forbes. Please come see them.
Oh, and one other thing, Nathan, did you want to speak to the LAC, the Local Assistance Center?
Yes. If you have not come yet, please come to the LAC. It's located at the Lucerne Alpine Senior Center, and tomorrow is the final day. It will be open 10 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to the questions portion of the meeting, and we have some fire progress questions, we have some debris-related questions, and all very good questions, so people are obviously very interested in the status of things. And the first question, I might ask if Supervisor Steele, Chairman Steele, could attempt to field. The question is the drinking water safe to drink around Lucerne? That is in your district?
Yeah, I'm going to assume that you're talking about the drinking water that goes through the filtration plant, because that's the only way you're going to drink any water out of that lake. But they have a very good filtration plant, and they are changing the filters to make sure that, in fact, that it's good water. They test the water before it actually is released into the public arena, and this is common around the lake simply because we do have a lake with a lot of cyanobacteria in it in the summertime, so that's normal. And in this county is actually a model for just about every other place in the world for being able to process water out of a lake full of cyanobacteria. They even come here from Lake Erie to learn how to do what we do on a normal basis. So we've developed this process over the years. It's very good. And the Lucerne area, they do have a new plant. I'm going to talk to them about whether or not they're changing their filters lately and whether anybody's getting any taste, because I know that they're interested in that. We do have public meetings, or council meetings. Make sure that you watch for those dates and come to those. You report any complaints there, that goes directly to me, and I go directly after the water processors to make sure they're delivering good water. So I have no problems with the water coming out of the lake.
Thank you, Chairman Steele. A couple of fire questions. Which of our reps would like to field those? Jeremy or Paul? So the first question is there a flare-up near Spring Valley? Could we switch back to the map? Would you like to?
As far as Spring Valley itself, I'm not aware of any flare-ups as of before we arrived here. There still is, and I want to make sure I explained correctly. We do have a lot of control line that is on our maps due toward the northern section of Clear Lake, but we still have a lot of fire equipment, as well as at any time as the public, if they see anything, they can call it in, and we'll have fire personnel go in and take a look. So we're not by any means out of that area. We will continue to have equipment working in that area, and there's a lot of suppression repair that's going to be needed to be done as well. So people are still, or firefighters are still in that area. So if we can also be cautious as you're driving in that area with the equipment that's in there as well.
Nathan, before I let fire reps sit down, did any new fire-related questions come in?
No.
Okay, so the next one is about evacuations being lifted, and I'll ask our sheriff to speak to that. When can Bartlett Springs Road owners return?
As of 4 o'clock this afternoon, the evacuation notification for Bartlett Springs Road had been reduced from a mandatory evacuation to an advisory evacuation, which means it's suggested that people still do not return. However, if they want to, that is permitted now. For the most up-to-date information on evacuations, we recommend that you subscribe to our Nixle. You can subscribe either online at nixle.com. You can subscribe through lakesheriff.com, or you can simply text 888-777 and text your zip code to that number, and you'll be enrolled in the MMS system and receive alert notifications on the cell phone device that you're texting from. So that number is, text your zip code to 888-777.
Thank you, Mr. Sheriff. So we have a series of questions that relate to ash and debris. So if I could ask James to come up, and then also the lake is interwoven in those questions. David, if you would come up as well, because there are a couple of questions about precautions around the lake, and you might want to tag team this. Okay. So the first question about debris that has to do with the lake is, what precautions are going to be used for the lake? And then a related question, what should owners do with larger size parking lots that are right next to the lake and the need to clear the fallen ash in those areas without probably putting it into the lake?
It seems to me that this is kind of a joint venture opportunity between both agencies. We have to work very closely together to minimize ash flowing into the bodies of waters of the state. But it seems apparent that folks could have some sort of wattle system, which is a barrier to protect the lake from the ash, but that's going to require some intervention. We have handouts on what that approach looks like for erosion control. Beyond that, I would not recommend people start cleaning up ash without talking to our office and gaining some additional information. So again, I would refer to our main phone number, 707-263-1164. I don't know if David would like to add on to that.
I think you hit it, James. I'd like to throw our office's telephone number out there as well. It's 707-263-2344, and that's for water resources. Again, when we're talking about large amounts of ash that are either in fields or natural settings or parking lots, there's going to be similar ways that we can approach that with wattles, straw bales, and that sort of thing. But if you want to contact our offices, we can help you with that.
Thanks. And
Was there
James,
another?
Dave, I think you're good, and James, if you'll stick around, I have a few more. Are wells contaminated by fires?
That's kind of an open question. So if the well is intact, the wellhead is intact, the likelihood of a well being affected would be no. If the wellhead is damaged and it's open, and it's let's say below grade, then if water was to flow into the well, it could contaminate it. So it's a remote possibility. It'd be a case-by-case basis. If anyone's interested, they can call our office, and I can talk to them and go site-by-site, site-specific information. I can help them with that.
And it looks like you're carrying a bunch of handouts that I believe people can pick up paper form at your office, or aren't they available online as well?
Correct. We have two main documents we're pushing out the door right now. One is cleaning up after a fire disaster, which has very specific information, safe cleanup of fire ash. It's usually a wet method, as Sheriff Martin already talked about. Very well done. And we also have handouts specific for those property owners that if they want to do their self-private cleanup, we have a specific process to that. But again, we encourage homeowners that have lost their structures to hold off for now so that we can work with the state and possibly get support from the state to do a mass cleanup. So it's not been solidified yet, but we're very hopeful.
Thank you, and I'm not quite done. There's a few more general questions about ash. So I'll just throw them all out because they're all kind of interrelated. What is the recommended method for cleaning ash? Where can fire ash be disposed of? Is the East Lake dump accepting fire debris?
Well, I'll take the last one first. I do not believe that the East Lake landfill is going to accept ash from fire debris for obvious reasons, because there's some constituents may be hazardous. And so we want to express that don't take it to the landfill. You'll need a clearance to do that. Our office works through that process along with other agencies, to include community development as an example for demolition. Specific to ash, each site's unique. You might have a light coat of ash, and most homes that survive, they can kind of hose that down. We have that item is actually talked about in our handout very specifically. And with respect to collecting it, we'd recommend you don't do that this time, and because we don't want people to put themselves in jeopardy, to expose themselves in unwarranted ways. So if you have a specific information that your site you want to talk at, please call our office and I will discuss the matter directly with you. But in the meantime, refrain from ash and debris removal at this time.
Thank you very much, and I think you're good. Chairman Steele, can I pick on you one more time? Is there anything being done to make people clean up fire-prone properties?
Well, that's a really good question. People are responsible for their own properties, and if you're only a hazard to yourself, there's really nothing that can be done. But if you're a hazard to someone else, yes, there is. The fire battalion chiefs can come and cite you for any long weeds or excess brush that, in fact, if it caught fire, could endanger your neighbor. If you're only endangering yourself, then it's between you and them and whether or not they believe that it's a danger to the neighbor. But here's the thing. We do have a program that is sponsored by CAL FIRE. You can go online to Ready, Set, Go at calfire.com. At that Ready, Set, Go site, they have a lot of criteria for how to both harden your home and how to do the setback, which goes out to 100 feet. And that setback has different vegetation types that you can have up to the first 30 feet, has some 10 foot of bare soil. Then after that, it's reduced height on the vegetation, non-fire prone vegetation. Then as it goes a little bit further, including within that area, no ladder fuels. The limbs are trimmed up so that the fire won't get into the crown. And you want to get your big trees far enough away from your property so you don't have a radiant heat that then comes and burns and drops your windows out and burns the edges of the building and gets it on fire. So all of those criteria are available on calfire.com. I really urge everyone to go after that piece of information and try to download it and take care of yourself. Now, for your neighbor, if you do have a complaint, it may not be a valid complaint because, again, someone with some expertise should be looking at it. Call your local fire district, and those fire chiefs are available at certain times of the year to come out when they're not busy to look at that property, and if there's a fine that needs to be administered, they can do that. The Department of what's our local department that handles this? I've just drew a blank. Call me. 295-6198. If you're in my district, call your district supervisor and we'll link you to the right department and try to get someone out there. Actually, I can do a lot of this work myself because I have a forester's license and I've been putting together a fire program, and I'd be glad to give you some pamphlets we have and some information on how to do it. But if your neighbor's a danger, then we have to have the fire people go out and talk to them, post it, and send them a notice.
Thank you so much. Thanks very much, Chairman Steele. Okay, the last few questions for this evening revolve around the need for assistance to some of our survivors, questions about housing assistance, temporary housing resources, and whether or not we're going to get federal assistance for this disaster. As we reported at the top of the meeting, federal assistance has been asked for, requested, and I'm referring to FEMA, and we are awaiting the response to that. Our Congressman Mike Thompson is closely monitoring that. State officials have also put in their request, so we are hopeful that that will come about. Specific to housing, someone asked, is there a county housing assistance program for fire survivors? There is not, but if we are successful in obtaining a FEMA declaration as a federal disaster, then in all likelihood, funding to assist with housing would be forthcoming, as it was in the Valley Fire. Another question, how can uninsured folks get temporary housing? Essentially the same answer. The hope is that we will receive the federal disaster declaration, and with that brings resources. As we wait, however, the place to be is the local assistance center. There are lots of resources available there. Many local and national organizations, state agencies as well, are banding together to provide fire survivors with assistance. So please get to the LAC tomorrow. It's in Lucerne at the Senior Center building, and the hours again tomorrow, Nathan? 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. So get out to the local assistance center, and as soon as we receive word of any federal declaration, you'll all be the first to hear. We'll be so thrilled to get that for our folks. So I believe that brings to a close tonight's virtual meeting. We fielded the questions from Facebook. I want to thank all of our presenters for taking the time to share valuable information, and we will release to you via media and Nixle our next scheduled date for the next virtual meeting. So thanks again and good evening.